Thank you so much and welcome for coming to the Lawmaker Summer Show and Tell webinar. My name is Madeline Dalton. I am the Outreach Coordinator at Inspire Washington, which means that a good portion of my work is dedicated towards organizing all of you so that you can learn how to speak to your lawmakers and speak to your lawmakers, whether that is on the city council, the county council level, the state level, or the congressional level, the federal level. Today, we're going to be talking about state lawmakers, and obviously you are all here because you've expressed some level of interest in taking a meeting with your lawmaker this summer. So we're going to talk first just about who we are as Inspire Washington if you are brand new, and then we'll dive into what our goals for Lawmaker Summer Show and Tell are, and then how to do it, step by step, all of our materials. All right, first, we're just going to take a moment for a land acknowledgement. Inspire Washington acknowledges that we and our cultural partners statewide are on the homelands of Native peoples who have lived in this region from time immemorial. Inspire Washington expresses its deepest respect for and gratitude towards these original and current caretakers and culture bearers of the region. As a cultural sector, we acknowledge our responsibility to establish and maintain relationships with these tribes and Native peoples in support of tribal sovereignty and the inclusion of their voices in teaching art, heritage, natural science, and providing cultural programming. We pledge that our relationships will consist of mutual trust, respect, and reciprocity. Currently, there are 29 federally recognized tribes that share traditional homelands and waterways in what is now Washington State. Some of these are nations and confederacies that represent multiple tribes and bands. All right, here's our mission as an organization. I will just zip my lip a little bit and give you a moment to read this on your own. So what this means is that we are here to support you. We are here to support the entire cultural sector and find all the different avenues and ways that we can do that, whether that is talking to lawmakers about increases for public funding or passing bills and laws that make your work easier, providing you with resources, professional development opportunities, or the network that you build by participating in this work and meeting each other and continuing the incredible work that you do. So here's a breakdown of kind of the different buckets of work that we do. Cultural coalition and partnerships. This is one way that we build a coalition, is we assemble all of our advocates and we become one united voice. And we can do this through many different events that we put on. We also consider all of you to be our partners, but we do have dues paying members in addition to that are at a slightly different level of partnership, but we're here for all of you. And then advocacy, that's what you're here to do now. You are here to advocate on behalf of the cultural sector, on behalf of your organization. And we do this as well with constituents and without constituents for that lawmaker. We also develop toolkits and resources, whether that is a how-to guide on how to throw a candidate forum, all the resources we're providing with you today, or a number of other things that you can find on our website or on the Inspiration League website. The Inspiration League, for those of you who do not know, is our online advocacy platform where we send out alerts that you can respond to just in 2 clicks, talk directly to your lawmaker to let them know that you care about a specific issue. And it has been very successful in influencing votes and really making an impact in our local government spaces. We also do education. So we do a big tour called the Cultural Futures Tour in May and June, which I'm sure many of you have attended. Thank you so much if that is you. This is when we share what happened during the legislative session, and we provide you with resources and opportunities for different grants and funding opportunities that you should know about. We educate you on what's going on, how to secure those opportunities, and then listen and talk about what you need, what you want us to advocate for going forward. And then we have other education programs as well, like voter education through candidate forums, etc. And then of course, this is a lot of work to track. So we are really prioritizing making sure it's easy for you by sending regular newsletters. We'll be hiring a communications coordinator in a couple of months too, so that'll be leveled up. Social media, all of that good stuff. All right, let's talk about what the cultural sector is, especially if you're new. Show of hands, if you are a science organization, raise your hand. So that would be a nature conservancy, a fish hatchery, a zoo, an aquarium, a science and innovation center, STEM education for kids. Raise your hands for science. Okay, no science folks today, that's all right. Heritage folks, raise your hands. That would be someone from a museum, a humanities organization, a historical or cultural heritage site. Okay, we've got some heritage folks in the house, hello. And then lastly, we have our arts folks, and that's a very big bucket. We have visual art, literature, music, dance, theater, spoken word, film, commercial radio, lots of arts folks in the house. That is very exciting. And I myself am an artist as well. I am a jazz musician and arranger, and I grew up doing theater on Mercer Island, and I knew Jesse and Manny through Youth Theater Northwest. So theater kid at heart, also have a background in some theater education. Arts education is really important to me, and now I'm a musician. All right, so let's talk about advocacy. You are here to advocate, and instead of thinking about advocacy on a January to December calendar, we kind of like to think about it from a May to April calendar, if that makes sense. Here's why. We start with the Cultural Futures Tour, and that is a debrief of not only what just happened, but also laying the groundwork for what is to come. We take this opportunity to speak to you and ask you what you need, what's going on in your community. In the Cultural Futures Tour, we go to so many different towns around the state. Someone might have to correct me on the exact number, but I believe it was either 26 or 27 statewide. So we are really going into all different communities, and each of those communities has its own unique needs. We won't know what these are until we talk to you and we get in your communities in person. So through this tour, we are starting to gather some information about what is important to you, the challenges and successes that you're facing, and then we can start to brainstorm ways that we can support this via legislation. Next step to lay the groundwork for the upcoming legislative session is where we are right now, Lawmaker Summer Show and Tell. This is your time to meet with lawmakers to share what is going on in your community. And unlike if you've ever done Arts, Heritage, and Science Week with us in February, which I'll talk about in a second, if you've participated in that, you'll know those meetings are very down to brass tacks, super fast, really talking about policy and weaving that in with personal stories. Summertime is totally different. It's really chill. This is a great time to have an upbeat, fun, relaxing meeting with your lawmaker, really get to know each other as people, because you're going to have more time to speak. You might have up to an hour, even 90 minutes to meet with them. More realistically, about 30 to 60 minutes, which for a lawmaker meeting is excellent. You have the luxury of time. And this is a great time to show them your programming, really show off what you do, what makes your organization or the work that you do special. And then you can have more of a conversation and a back and forth about it. This is a great way to build your relationship with your lawmaker and also give them some local stories, kind of prime their brains so that they can vote with culture in mind or create legislation with culture in mind when the session rolls around. So we'll be having you guys take your lawmaker meetings from now through the month of September. And then Inspire Washington is going to shift our gears to focus on Arts, Heritage, and Science Week. If you do not already know what Arts, Heritage, and Science Week is, this is our annual event every February during the legislative session when we have hundreds of advocates from all over the state come to the state capitol, either virtually or in person, to meet with their 2 representatives and their 1 state senator. This has been such a successful, wonderful event where you will have connected with each other, raised your voice for culture, and we're really excited for AHS Week 2027, which will be the first week of February. So during this time, I'm going to start launching some advocacy webinars that are focused around Arts, Heritage, and Science Week, and I'll also be recruiting my regional captains. We split the state into 12 different advocacy regions that contain about 3 to 5 districts that are all next to each other, and each of those districts will have 1 or 2 captains, and they will help lead the way. They're kind of like the middle person between me and you as an advocate, the communications liaison, if you will. So we start recruiting those folks in September and October. Then we move to November and December, where we start recruiting advocates who do not have leadership positions, as well as our district leaders. Usually I'll start maybe recruiting those in October. A district leader is just in charge of 1 district. So a little bit less work than a regional captain, but still doing a lot of speaking directly to legislative aides and scheduling of lawmaker meetings. So those folks will all be in place in the earlier fall, and in the later fall, we'll start recruiting our advocates who are just there to join, raise their voice, support a meeting, but there's no like scheduling with the lawmaker's office that you would have to do. We'll do webinars through that to train you, to help you know what's going on, what to expect, how the state legislature works, all that good stuff. And by December, we'll do a district leader training for all of our district leaders on Zoom. Then we hit January, and this is a big time for us to kick off advocacy for all of you. We host a big rally called the All In for Advocacy Rally, where we tell you what's on the agenda this legislative session. We really get you fired up, get you to join AHS Week. And then those AHS Week teams are going to prep all throughout January. And then in February, they go to the state capitol and they take their meetings. After that groundwork has been laid, Then we're going to keep sending out action alerts throughout the legislative session, responding to things that are happening, and you'll all be in the Inspiration League, so you'll be able to respond to those action alerts. And there are also opportunities to testify for bills virtually or in Olympia, and we'll send step-by-step directions whenever that comes up. Then the legislative session ends. The legislative session this particular year will go from January through April. It's a longer session. And then once that wraps up, we start that year-round advocacy calendar all over again. So now you know how that all works, but why should you even be doing this? I think there are many reasons that you should. And the first one is that you will be a voice for your community. Not only will you be a voice for yourself, but you can come in representing your colleagues, your patrons, your audience members, your friends, your family, your children, so many other people. You will be able to be a voice for them. Additionally, you can be a voice for the boots on the ground perspective that your lawmakers are lacking. Even if your lawmaker is really supportive of science, heritage, and arts, they might not really know what's going on because they have so many issues to track and they're not living the day-to-day life. They won't know what that's like until you tell them, and that is such a valuable perspective. These personal stories are the bedrock of advocacy. These are the things that resonate with your lawmaker way more than bill numbers or policy or language changes, none of that. That's what they have staff for. They want to hear from you. What is it like to be you? How can they support you? And oftentimes a really impactful story will actually make it from your mouth to the legislative voting floor, which is really cool. So know that your stories have a lot of impact, and this insight is really critical for lawmakers. You can also build or sustain a relationship with a lawmaker. These relationships can really help not only get bills passed and do all the things that we want to do, but it can help your community and your organization. Your lawmaker can step up and represent your constituents, help you get funding for things. These are all great reasons to have a relationship with your lawmaker. You could also give your lawmaker an idea for legislation. Maybe you're facing a really critical problem that sheds light on a problem that's happening across the state that really inspires them, and now they want to write a bill or prime sponsor a bill. You just never know. You're also sustaining conversations about our sector at large. Obviously, we love AHS Week. We love that we get to go to the Capitol and speak, but it is in 15-minute increments. And one 15-minute meeting per year per office is not going to cut it. We need to have sustained conversations about culture, and we need to have them in many different forms. We need those like straight to the point once February, and we need our chill, getting to know you human conversations during the summertime. We are a huge coalition, and we raise our voices, but we can't keep being a huge coalition if people don't show up. So you being a part of our coalition shows that we are a force to be reckoned with, and that we are not a nice to have as the cultural sector. We are a need to have. And finally, this one is a little bit more specific. It might not apply to you now, or it might not apply to you at all. But there's something called local community projects that you should know about. If you want a deeper dive into this, you can reach out directly to me, and Jesse will put our email addresses in the chat at the end of this, and we're happy to talk to you in much more detail. We support organizations through this. Local community projects are, each member of the legislature gets a pot of funding for themselves to dole out to their district, and they get to decide what that's for. Typically, these will be for like capital projects or like building related things. And you can only get this funding by going directly through your lawmaker to have them sponsor you. So if you see a capital project on the horizon, this is a great thing to keep in your brain, and you're going to need some time to set the stage and take them on a tour of, let's say the roof of your building really needs repairs. You're going to want to take them on a tour of the building, show them the roof so they can see what's happening, and then they can put in a request for your capital project. Again, this is a much bigger conversation. So if you want more details, we are happy to talk with you offline in a much more detailed way. I'm also planning on putting together a guide in the coming weeks to help you talk about local community projects through your summer show and tell meetings. But if you know you have one on the horizon, this is a great time to lay the groundwork. And if you have one in like 2 years, 3 years, it's a great time to start talking about it, building that relationship with your lawmaker so you're setting yourself up for success. Before we move into diving into our materials, I'd love to know if you have any questions about what I have presented so far. All right, awesome. Thanks, everyone. All right, let's talk about how to talk to your lawmakers, because this probably is pretty scary. It seems really, I want to say, like, I want to demystify it is what I want to do, because it can seem hard to wrap your brain around how to do it. And these are like local celebrities in a way, and that can be stressful. But really, they're just people. They're just people. They're just like you and me. And we're just having a really nice, respectful human conversation. And that alone can take so much of the pressure off. So the first thing you should know is to know your audience. Specifically, it's good for you to have a general sense of if your lawmaker is supportive of the cultural sector or not. You can gather this information through looking at voting records if you want to be really nerdy about it, speaking to other people who might know the lawmaker, have experience with them, and you can also make some inferences based on their party lines. Again, this is a general statement, and we are a nonpartisan organization. But generally speaking, someone who is less fiscally conservative is going to respond to different talking points to someone who is more fiscally conservative. So if you're speaking with a lawmaker who is more fiscally conservative, really lean on the economic development aspect of this. We have some amazing stats about economic development that I'm going to talk about in just a second. That's a great way to get them intrigued and to gain their support, versus someone who is less fiscally conservative and really appreciates social programs is going to respond better to how these programs make a tangible impact in our communities for quality of life and basic civil rights. Regardless of if your lawmaker has been supportive of culture or not, we would like you to please thank them for their support. In past years, we've maybe said, thank the people who were supportive, just don't say anything to the folks who weren't supportive and encourage them to support. But this year, we're faced with a really tough budget. And no matter how supportive someone has been in the past, it's going to be a bit of an uphill climb. So we want to thank them for trying their best, because this is a sticky situation, and that shows that we are willing to work with them. So always say thank you. It goes a long way. Next is stay on message, and we'll talk about our talking points in just a second, but don't go off on any huge tangents or something that's like hyper specific to you specifically. Talk about your community, the impact on your audience, your patrons, the children, things like that. Still stay local, stay specific, but don't go off on some massive tangent that doesn't have anything to do with this. And don't bring up other political issues that are not about the cultural sector or not connected to the cultural sector. Stay on topic. Next, get local. And when I say get local, I mean get really, really, really local. You can always connect it back to what's happening in the state at large, but your lawmaker is really going to care about what's happening at your organization, in your district, in your city or town. And that leads great into telling your personal story. We want to hear why you care about culture. How does this impact your life? How does this impact you as someone who works for a cultural organization? How does this impact your children, your children's friends, the students in your education system, the students who come through your building if you do educational programs? How does it impact the seniors in your community? There's so many different people that this has a tangible impact for, and it is way more important to talk about that than a bill, especially over the summertime. Finally, be amicable and assertive. Again, there's a little bit less of an assertive energy during the summertime. When we have our winter meetings, we give you an ask language, and there's not really an ask this summer, but you still want to be assertive about supporting the cultural sector. We are not a nice to have, we are a need to have. We deserve support and we deserve dignity. And if you ever are made to feel like that is not the case, you can stand your ground with the lawmaker. And then finally, you want to just follow up with your lawmaker after summer show and tell. These meetings are great, but they are so much more valuable when you do that follow-up work. So make sure you're emailing their offices. If anything comes up that you've promised to have some sort of follow-up conversation about, you can just send a quick thank you and then send them another email in 3 months' time. Some sort of regular rhythm of following up is going to do you a lot of good. All right, let's dive into our materials. I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quickly, and then we're going to move over to walking through, one, how to find all of our materials on our website, and two, what the materials are even covering. Really quick, thank you for your patience while I exit out of share mode on my PowerPoint.
Madeline, Alicia has her hand raised.
Oh yeah, Alicia, what's up?
Alicia.
I was just wondering, you obviously you want to tell them about how, your organization impacts, but like, how much do you want to engage with them and kind of get their input on like what's important to them? How much should you be asking them questions, rather than just talking at them?
That is an excellent question. I would recommend saving at least the last 5 to 10 minutes of your meeting with them for talking about them. You can start with an icebreaker to talk about their connection to the cultural sector to get that human connection, and then close out with asking them about their priorities, cultural or not. We will talk about that in a little bit more depth in our talking points section, but I would say a nice little bookend is a good way to engage your lawmaker. Thanks for asking.
Erin also has a question. Erin, do you
Oh,
want
yeah,
to ask
sure.
it or do you want me to read it for you?
Oh, if you
Looks like
could.
I'm.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Thanks. Hi, Erin.
just hi. What? Oh, there we go. Flicker for a moment. What guidance do you have for regional organizations that serve more than one city, county, or congressional district? I assume you're just meeting with one congressperson at a time, so you cater your story to that individual. But is there more that you would recommend?
Yeah, that is a really good question. First, just a quick clarification. This is not geared toward members of Congress, so not, for example, Pramila Jayapal in Seattle, but rather your legislative district. There are 49 legislative districts. I can put the legislative district finder link in the chat after this, or Monica, I don't know if you know where that lives on the Ledge website, but if you do, while I'm chatting, you can put that in the chat. But that's a good way to figure out who your lawmaker is. But yes, assuming because these are smaller districts, there are going to be more of you who are serving multiple different lawmakers, which is a great question. So I would say that I think it depends on who the lawmaker is and how many meetings you're taking, but try to zoom in more on if you have any stats on their specific district, then use those. If you have stats about how the impact is for just the county or just the larger area, then share that, but continue to reiterate that they are within this district, they are within this area, this impacts their constituents. And it is truly up to you how many meetings you want to take based on your bandwidth. And if you have any specific questions about like committee assignments, who would be the most important person to meet with, you're always welcome to reach out to us. I will show a resource really quickly of how you can learn more information about your lawmakers and kind of make that decision for yourself.
Hey, Erin, I'll add in one other little bit. Hi, everyone. This is Jessie from the Deputy Director for Inspire Washington. I think it's also awesome to invite more than one lawmaker at a time to these meetings. I know TPS represents a really wide swath of people. So, geographically speaking. So I think it's perfectly awesome if you want to invite one lawmaker from the 36th, one from the 43rd, one from the 10th, like spread it around and they can all come together. I think that's a great way for them also to work together on issues that will support your organization. So for an organization like you that does span a lot of area, if you're able to rally their schedules all at the same time, I think that would be a great option.
Thank you.
Awesome. That's a great addition. Thank you so much, Jesse. All right, let's get into our materials. So, can everyone see my screen okay? Awesome. All right, so we have a web page with all of these materials living on it. It looks like this. I will show you how to get there. So if you just go to inspirewashington.org and then you hover over the advocacy tab and then click on Lawmaker Summer Show and Tell, it'll take you right where you need to be. So we have a how-to guide, some talking points, an email template, contact information for your lawmakers, and a social media toolkit. So let's go ahead and start with our talking points. What are we talking about? I would like to think of this in 3 different buckets. We have our big picture sector-wide, then you're going to zoom in on you, your organization, your community, and then you're going to turn it over to them. And you can kind of bookend it with the turning it over to them. An icebreaker is always good, and then ending with asking them about their legislative priorities. So for the big picture sector-wide, here are some great economic development stats. The for-profit and nonprofit arts and culture sector in Washington accounts for 9.78% of the state's GDP, which is number 1 in the nation by percentage of state's GDP. That is incredible. We far outpace even the states that you think would have the highest numbers, like California and New York. So that is a huge story for how much the cultural sector impacts Washington's economy. We have an arts fact sheet linked here, so if you want to use that in your meetings or send it to your lawmaker, you're welcome to. Remember to thank them for their support. And then we just want to talk about how the budget shortfall is, I mean, it acknowledge that it is hard for everyone and they're in a sticky situation, but also talk about how it impacts you, how it's making for less money from state agencies like ArtsWA and Humanities Washington, and that support for the sector is lacking across the state, and we need it in all areas, city, county, federal, state, and we can't slack on any of those areas. They're all needed for robust support for these critical organizations. So support from the state is really critical. Then when you talk about your organization, here are some prompts that you can work with. One is, we don't want this to be a downer meeting, so if you have any success stories, this is a great time to share them. You can talk about a grant that you've received. If you live in a community that has a cultural access program and that has helped you expand or sustain your programming, talk about how that has helped. Or maybe you've had a programmatic accomplishment, you've hired somebody new, you've ventured into new territory, whatever that may be, whatever is exciting you, you should share that with your lawmaker. You can also share what's exciting about what's coming up. You can share who you work with and serve, who's on your board, who are your patrons, are there any opportunities for your lawmaker to engage with those people? You can talk about your short and long-term goals, and then you can also talk about your short and long-term challenges. What's a current struggle? What do you see coming down the pike, maybe that could be prevented with legislation or not? And then, of course, this is a great time to talk about local community projects if that applies to you. And finally, when you talk to your lawmaker, we love some icebreakers talking about their personal connection. So you can ask them which is their favorite. Is it aquariums, museums, theater? Do they have a personal connection to your organization? Do they have a personal connection to any other cultural programming in the state? And oftentimes if they have children, their children are participating in cultural programming. So you could ask them if they have children or other family members and see if they're connected. And that's a great way to find some sort of instant bond. They'll care so much more about hearing about music programming if they're like, oh, my kid plays the violin. It's a great way to hook them. And then at the end of the meeting, you can ask them what they're most passionate about, cultural or not, any bills that they're currently planning to sponsor that they want to talk about, and also ask them if they have any advice or things that they think we should know as constituents going into the legislative session, given the budget reality or just given where we're at in general. And finally, just a heads up for all of you, once again, the state budget situation is really challenging. You'll probably hear some pushback to this. It will most likely be kind, but you will hear some pushback and a lot of references to this. So just know that that's coming and know that we're in a tough situation and stand your ground while also being understanding and considerate. You should also know if your lawmaker is running for re-election, Ballotpedia is a great resource for this. You can also look at the legislative website. And you can look up stuff about your lawmakers committee roles with that link, which I'll show in a second. And then, of course, the last thing I want you to know is that you have more time. So take advantage of it. Really use this to your advantage. Relax. You can really dive into things during a summer meeting, and it's really exciting. All right, we are probably going to run over a bit. I hope that's okay with everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. If you have to jump off, no worries. We're recording this, so you can always catch up with this later, and all these resources live on our website. All right, so here's our how-to guide. When you're actually in setting up this meeting, how do you do that? First, determine what you're inviting them to. So you have a lot of options. Maybe your organization has a specific event, like a performance or a gallery opening, invite them to that event. If not, maybe a walkthrough of your space or like a visitation. If you have some programming going on during the day, every day you could have your lawmaker sit in on a summer camp, for example, or a walkthrough behind the stage, a walkthrough of just, if you are at an aquarium, you don't have to pick a specific exhibit, but you can just give them a walkthrough of the space, a private tour. And if none of that applies to you, that's okay. You may be an individual artist, you may just be dark for the summer, whatever that is. You can totally invite them to grab coffee. Lawmakers love to get coffee within their district. They have their favorite coffee spots. And if not, you could ask if you could visit their district office, and I'm sure they would be up for that. The next thing you have to decide is if you're going to invite a team of fellow constituents to join you or not. And this is totally your choice. You do not have to. You can take a meeting by yourself, or you can take a meeting with the whole group. And when I say fellow constituents, I mean folks who work or live in the district. And these could be board members, audience members, program participants, colleagues, friends, family, etc. And in our experience, it is much easier to set the date first and then invite people. Trying to calendar with like 10 different people or 7 different people is going to be like herding cats, and you're going to go insane. And then maybe you won't even get to take a meeting, and we don't want to see that. So Set the meeting time with the lawmaker first. They're also really busy people, so you're going to have limited options, and then invite your people. And you don't have to. If you would prefer to take a private meeting with your lawmaker, you totally can. That is completely up to you. Once you've determined those things, then you're going to use the email template linked here and the email addresses linked here to email your lawmaker. And I'll show you that email template now. Normally, our email templates are not highlighted so much. Highlighted means that you need to edit that portion. And typically we are going to have a much more stock answer for you to give your lawmakers. But this is up to you. This is about you to show off your programming and what's going on in your district. So there's a lot more individual stuff to add. So you'll just share your name, where you're from, your organization, a little bit about what you do, and then share some more about what's happening right now in your community. And then this section right here is all about tailoring it to the type of meeting that you're inviting them to. So we just have some guidance on how to frame it depending on what you're inviting them to. For example, if you have a specific event, we recommend that you mention that you have a comp ticket for them. It might come across as a little bit rude if you don't offer some sort of discount or comp ticket for a paid event. But of course, that is up to the discretion of your organization and the event itself. So you'll just kind of give those details, and then if you have specific dates, you can offer those. If it's more open-ended, you can ask them when they're free, and then just a little thank you and your name and email. So you'll send that email, and we have a contact sheet with all the email addresses on it. And I just want you to keep in mind a couple of things. One, CC all of your legislative aides, and two, CC me, because I would love to know how many meetings are actually happening. And I won't know if I am not on the email thread. So please CC me, advocacy@inspirewashington.org, and you'll CC your legislative aides. I'm going to show you our contact list right now. There used to be full contact information for the legislature on the website, and it is no longer available. So we have put together this handy dandy contact sheet for you. And it includes the name of your lawmaker, their email address, and their aides. You're always going to want to CC your aide because they are the one actually doing the active scheduling work. If you just email your lawmaker, they are probably not going to see it. But it's also still good to make sure it goes to their inbox because aides are monitoring their inbox as well. So add both people and know that you will most likely be speaking with the legislative aide. A handful of folks have multiple aides. If that's the case, you're going to want to CC them both. And my last little tip on that is just that this is a very high turnover profession, and so despite our best efforts, we may not have tracked every single person correctly in an accurate fashion. You may get an email bounce, and if you do, you'll likely get like a "I've left" email automated that has the new aide's email address. So if you get access to that information, please email it to me so that I can update the sheet. Because again, I'm not emailing all 147 members of the legislature right now. So I'm sure there's somebody that I've missed, and that would be much appreciated if you could do that. If not, that's okay. But just wanted to throw that out there if you've got the time. Lastly, when you send out those emails and you're doing your scheduling process, it's still worth it to meet with staff. It feels a little bit different, but it doesn't mean it is a less valuable meeting. Or that you shouldn't do it. Staff are going to have a slightly different approach to things because they're a little bit more policy oriented, but they still really care about what's going on in the district and hearing local stories, and they can still provide you with a lot of help and relationship building as we head into the session. So stay open to meeting with them if your lawmaker is totally unavailable. We would much rather you take a staff meeting than no meeting at all. And then finally, after all of that stuff is set, then you're going to want to invite your fellow constituents if you choose to do so. And we have a little template provided linked here for folks who you invite and they say, "Oh, I wish I could make it, but I can't." This is a little email template so that they can email their lawmaker in support of the cultural sector and use their voice without actually physically attending the meeting. Finally, we have our talking points that we went over linked there, so you can use those to prep. And we have a quick little do's and don'ts of talking to lawmakers guide. It's basically the same thing that I said earlier in the presentation, so we won't go over it today, but it's a helpful resource if you need it. And then let's stop there. Any questions before I talk about social media?
Yeah, Madeline, Anna has a question. What about lawmakers who are not running for re-election? Do you recommend talking to candidates or for their office?
Yes, I would say the answer to both is yes. So if you have an existing relationship with your lawmaker and they're not running for re-election, taking a meeting can be a good way to thank them and help them, you stay in their mind as they pass the baton to the next person. If you've never met with that lawmaker before, my personal recommendation would be you can probably skip it. Candidates are great to meet with. The way that you'll find their contact information is by finding their election office. Like, for example, John Jacob Jingleheimer Smith for office at blah 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 dot gmail. Like that's going to be their email address instead of a ledge email address. So you'll have to do a little bit of digging, but most of them should be publicly available. We do recommend, if you can, taking those meetings with candidates. And just remember to keep it really broad and no endorsing of any candidates, or saying either way if you support or don't support them. It's all educational opportunities and asking them about their platform, how the cultural sector factors into their platform or not. You're really just in that way setting the stage for, if they do get elected, having a relationship with them, rather than trying to influence any election results or anything like that. Great question. Any other questions? Awesome. All right. So before I talk about social media, let's actually talk about the Ledge website. If you're trying to decide how you want to tailor your meeting or who to prioritize, then every legislator has their own profile. So if you go back a little bit, there's a home legislators on ledge.wa.gov, and then you can search for people by name. So I guess I'll click on Peter Abarno first because he was the first name to pop up, and you can see their party, their district. Position doesn't really mean anything. You don't need to factor that in. You can see the name of their legislative assistant, and a little fun fact for you is that the email format for everyone in the legislature is first name dot last name at ledge.wa.gov. So if your email bounces and you don't get the email back of who the new person is, you can kind of do some sleuthing and see if they're on the website. Then we can look at committee membership, and you can see which committees they're on, and then you can see if they have some sort of chair or ranking member position. A chair is going to be a Democrat because they're in the majority, and a ranking member is the minority party, so those are going to be Republicans. But that means that they have the most, for their party, the most influence, the most power. So regardless of party line, you're going to want to look for a chair or a ranking member to meet with, and again, don't not meet with people who don't have leadership positions. You want to meet with everyone in your district. But if you're trying to make a decision because you only have so much time, or you have a ton of lawmakers that could be pertinent to your work, you might want to start dialing in and focusing on that if you'd like. And then different bills come through different committees. We don't have time to talk about all of that. If you have any super specific questions about that, you can email us and we can help tell you which committees are going to be better to keep an eye on. But appropriations, rules, ways and means, those are general money committees. So anyone who's on those committees is a great person to meet with. And then their voting records are here if you want to do some really nerdy deep diving and see how they voted. All right, and then last, we'll talk about social media. This is all optional, but we would love to have you post about Summer Show and Tell on social media to spread the word, encourage other people to take their meetings, and show off what you do and the meeting that you took. So I just put together this little folder that's linked on the website with some materials that you can use. We have a little Instagram badge in 2 different sizes, horizontal and vertical, so that you can show off that you met with your lawmaker during Summer Show and Tell. We have a little just general logo that you can use to promote it if you want to share it with people, spread the word so that they meet with their lawmakers. We have some social media captions that you can use in your posts if you don't know what to say. So feel free to copy and paste those and edit them as you see fit, and then use those 2 hashtags. And then finally, here's a little transparent overlay. So if you want to make your own graphics, like if you have a picture of you and your lawmaker and the constituents, and then you want to put this on over it on like Canva or something, you can do that. All optional, take and leave what you want to, but we highly encourage you to participate in that way. All right, that's it for all my materials. I know this is always a lot of information when we talk through advocacy materials and what to do. So thank you all so much for being here, for listening to me talk super fast about a whole bunch of stuff. If you have any other questions, please let me know. I'm happy to respond via email. I'll stick around on this call too so we can chat. And remember to CC me on your lawmaker invite email so that I can see who is doing it.